Hello everyone. Today we'll see about physiology of eye. So before I start physiology, I would like to explain about the introduction of sense organs and anatomy of eye so that you can understand physiology of the eye easily. The group of specialized cells which receive stimuli is known as sense organ. So the sense organs are present in almost all the animals from invertebrates to vertebrates. So here we can see the sense organ which is known as stigma or the eye spot in euglena. So we can say that the sense organs are present from protozoan to higher vertebrates. So some receptors respond to more than one type of stimulus, but some receptors respond to only one stimulus. Multicellular animals respond to various internal and external environmental factors. The change is detected by an organ is called stimulus, and this stimulus which evokes in living organism is called response. So in almost in all the vertebrates, the eye is spherical in shape and it lies in the orbit of the skull, which is also known as eye socket, and it is attached to the orbit by 6 pairs of muscles known as superior oblique muscle and inferior oblique muscle, and superior rectus muscle, inferior rectus muscle, and medial rectus muscle and lateral rectus muscle. And all these muscles are controlled by the cranial nerves like third, fourth and fifth nerves, which are known as oculomotor, trochlear and abducens. So these muscles help in the movement of the eyeball during accommodation. So each human eye is about 2.5 centimeters in diameter, and it is made up of 3 coats. First, let me explain about the coats, and later we'll see about the lens and other parts. Okay. So the outermost coat is known as the fibrous coat, which is also known as sclerotic coat, and this sclerotic coat is made up of the posterior sclera and anterior cornea. So the sclera is opaque outermost layer which is made up of fibroelastic collagen, and it maintains the shape of the eyeball and it protects all other inner parts of the eye and also inner layers. So anterior part of the outermost fibrous coat is cornea. So this cornea is transparent and thin, and it is covered by a thin transparent conjunctiva which is continuous with the lining of eyelids, and it lacks blood vessels but rich in nerve endings. So this helps in blinking and also flow of tear. And canal of Schramm is present at the junction of the sclera and the cornea to drain the aqueous humor, which is continuously produced and then into the blood. and it allows the light to pass into the eye. So due to its curvature, it helps to refract the light and focusing the light on the retina, which is going to form the inverted image. The cornea serves as a filter for UV radiation. Then conjunctiva. So this conjunctiva is thin transparent layer and it covers cornea and continues with the skin over the eye, and it is composed of a stratified epithelium and continues with the eyelids. So here you can see continues with the eyelids, and it protects the cornea, secretes oil to lubricate and moisten the eye. Next, the middle layer is a vascular layer or the vascular coat, and this vascular coat contains choroid, ciliary body and suspensory ligament, then iris. So choroid is a pigmented layer and it lies just beneath the sclera. Then it is made up of a connective tissue, pigment cells and blood vessels. So the pigment cells absorb the light and they prevent the reflection of the light within the eye. Blood supply the nutrients and oxygen to the inner lying coat, which is known as retina. Then this choroid expands to form a triangular structures known as ciliary bodies. So these ciliary bodies are less vascular, thick and less pigmented. So it contains smooth muscles. So here we can see different types of muscles which are present in the ciliary body. Okay. So ciliary body contains the smooth muscles like a circular smooth muscles which are known as circular ciliary muscles and meridional ciliary muscles. So here these muscles are attached to the suspensory ligament. So this suspensory ligament is attached to the lens capsule. So contraction of these muscles causes relaxation of the suspensory ligaments, and that results in bulging of the anterior surface of the lens called accommodation. Thus, the ciliary muscles alter the shape of the lens. The inner surface is folded to form ciliary processes which secrete the aqueous humor, and suspensory ligaments are very thin thread-like structures. Next we'll see about iris. So this iris is the most anterior part of the vascular coat. It is a circular muscular diaphragm with pigments which give color to the eyes like black, blue or green. So it contains the muscles like circular muscles and radial muscles. So the circular muscles are also known as sphincter muscles, whereas the radial muscles are also known as dilator muscles. So these muscles are ectodermal in origin. So it controls entry of amount of light by contraction of the radial muscles in dim light and circular muscles in bright light. So muscles are controlled by autonomous nervous system, and the next we'll say about the nervous cord. So the nervous cord is the innermost sensitive cord, and this lies just beneath the choroid, and this is a very delicate, non-vascular, light sensitive and neural layer, and it is externally in contact with the choroid and internally it is in contact with the vitreous humor. So it is differentiated into posterior pars optica and anterior non-sensory ora serrata. So this ora serrata lies in between the posterior part of the retina and the ciliary body. So it is made up of outer pigmented and inner nervous layer. So this ora serrata is a special structure which is present at the junction of the retina and the ciliary body, and it demarcates the sensory part from the non-sensory part of the retina. So retina has a small yellowish area at the center which is opposite to cornea, is known as macula lutea, which is also known as yellow spot, and this contains a shallow depression called fovea centralis. So it contains only cone cells, and this is without rods and blood vessels. So it is the place of most distinct vision. So behind this yellow spot, here you can see the blind spot through which the nerves, arteries and vein pass through this spot. So it is a divide of receptor cells. Retina consists of many layers like layer of pigment cells and layer of rods and cones and layer of external nucleus and external flexiform layer, internal nuclear layer, internal flexiform layer, layer of ganglion cells and layer of optic nerve fibers. So the outer layer is the layer of pigment cells. So this is a single layer of pigmented cuboidal cells, and it is close to the choroid coat, and it continues beyond ora serrata. The cells have the brown pigment, nucleus and processes of the cells. So also have phagocytic and ion transport properties. This layer helps in rejuvenation of bleached cells and storage of vitamin A. So next layer is layer of rods and cones. So it is made up of the processes of the rod cells and cone cells. So there are about 110 to 125 million rods and 6.3 to 6.8 million cones in human retina. So the rods contain the photosensitive pigment which is known as rhodopsin, and this is composed of the opsin and retinine. The opsin is the protein part which is also known as scotopsin, and the retinine is also known as retinal, and it is an aldehyde of vitamin E. And the rods mainly enable the man to see in darkness. So the cone cells contain the pigments like porphyrosin, iodopsin and cyanopsin, which give response to red, green and blue color respectively. The sensations of different colors are produced by various combinations of these three types of cones and their photopigments. When all the cones are stimulated equally, a sensation of white color is produced, and the protein which is present in the cone cells is known as photopsin. So this is different from scotopsin which is present in rod cells. So external nuclear layer is made up of the cell bodies and the nucleus of rod and cone cells. The next one is external plexiform layer. So this layer consists of only the nerve fibers, and these nerve fibers form the network which is known as plexus. So the axons of the rods and cones synapse here with the dendrites of bipolar neurons and also processes of the horizontal neuron. Here we can see the synapses. So next one is internal nuclear layer. So this is made up of only the cell bodies of different cells known as bipolar neurons, and the cell body of horizontal neuron and cell of amacrine cell. Next one is internal plexiform layer. So this layer is again made up of only the nerve fibers, and these nerve fibers form the synapses. So here we can see the nerve fibers of bipolar neurons and amacrine cells, then ganglion cells. Next layer of ganglionic cell. So here we can see the cell bodies and the nuclei of the ganglion cells, and here the cells are connected to the optic fibers. So next one is a layer of optic fibers. So this is made up of the axons of ganglion cells that form the optic nerve. The optic nerves are later connected to the brain. The nerve fibers from all parts of the retina converge and leave through a blind spot. Already I have explained that, in which the rods and cones are absent, so image is not formed at this spot. Cell bodies of retinal gliocytes are present in the internal nuclear layer. So these cells form numerous protoplasmic processes that extend through almost the whole thickness of the retina and form the external limiting membrane and internal limiting membrane. The internal limiting membrane separates the retina from the vitreous humor, and retinal gliocytes support the neurons of the retina and may ensheath them, and also they are nutritive in function, and some astrocytes are also present in between the retinal neurons. So eye is like a camera. So the lens is biconvex in almost in all the vertebrates, that helps in accommodation of the eye. In elasmobranchs, teleosts, amphibians and reptiles, the lens can move for accommodation, whereas in birds and mammals and in some reptiles, focusing is by muscular contractions that change the curvature of the lens. So here we can see two humors, aqueous humor, which is watery in nature, and it is present at the anterior part of the eye between the cornea and the lens, and the vitreous humor, which is present at the posterior part of the eye, which contains the fluid which is gel-like in nature. And at the center of the lens, there is a small hole which is known as a pupil. So the size of the pupil varies, depends on the light intensity. So here we can see all the parts of the eye are similar to the parts of the camera. So we can say that the eye is like a camera. The transparent cornea allows the light to pass through it, and this helps to focus the light on the lens due to its convexity and curvature in front. The light rays enter through pupil and lens. The iris regulates the amount of light, and the ciliary muscles along with the suspensory ligament changes the shape of the lens, like adjusting the camera for objects that are nearby or far away. The lens focuses the light on retina, which is the film. The image formed is an inverted image, then it is reversed. The choroid prevents internal reflection of light. The light that falls on the retina after stimulating the neurons is absorbed by choroid. The rods and cones show a change and are conveyed as a nerve impulse to the visual centers which are present in the brain through the optic nerve. The brain turns the image right side up and turns the image around so that we can see them as they are and not upside down and reversed. Light is reflected into the eyes by the various objects within the field of vision. The different colors have the different wavelengths. The specific color is perceived when only one wavelength of light is reflected by an object and all other wavelengths are absorbed. For example, when an object appears a white, all wavelengths are reflected, and when it appears black, all are absorbed, and when it appears red, only the red wavelength is reflected and all others are absorbed. The light reflected from objects within the visual field is focused on the retinae of both eyes to achieve a clear vision. Production of a clear vision involves two processes like a refraction of light rays and accommodation of the eyes to light. So first we'll see about the refraction of light rays. So refraction means the light rays bend or turn aside. So when the light rays pass through a medium of one density to another, the light rays are refracted or bent. So this principle applies in the eyes to focus light on the retina. So many structures which are denser than the air are involved. The light rays pass successively through cornea, aqueous humor, then lens, which is nothing but the crystalline lens, and vitreous humor. A lens bends light rays to converge or diverge. So next we'll say about accommodation of eye. The ability of the eye to bring about the necessary alterations in the focal length of the lens according to the distance of the object from the eye is known as accommodation. So when the eye is at rest, the ciliary muscles are relaxed and stretched and has a long focal length and is adapted for viewing distant objects. When the ciliary muscles contract, the tension in the suspensory ligaments. So here you can see the suspensory ligaments, and these suspensory ligaments is reduced, and this causes the shrinkage of the lens, and this lens becomes thicker and has a short focal length. So varying degree of contraction of the ciliary muscles helps the lens to focus objects at varying distances from the eye. Hence, very distant and very near objects can be brought to a focus on the retina. The normal resting eye is set for parallel rays traveling from objects 20 feet or more and does not require any accommodation. As objects move nearer to the eyes, the rays of light reflected by the object and become more divergent and require to the refracted more accurately. These factors are involved like the size of the pupils, the movement of the eyeballs, and increased curvature of lens. The pupils control the amount of light entering the eye. In a bright light, the pupils are constricted, whereas in dim light, the pupils are dilated. If the pupils were dilated in a bright light, too much light may enter the eye and damage the retina. In a dim light, if the pupils were constricted, insufficient light may enter the eye to stimulate the nerve endings in the retina and nothing would be seen. And already we have discussed about the iris, which is made up of the circular muscle fibers and radial muscle fibers. Okay, and as already I have explained you, the contraction of the circular muscle fibers constricts the pupils, and contraction of the radiating or the radial muscle fibers dilates the pupils. So this is the normal size of the pupil. So the size of the pupil is controlled by ANS, that is nothing but autonomous nervous system. So sympathetic stimulation dilates, okay, whereas the parasympathetic stimulation constricts the pupils. So next we will see about the movements of the eyeballs due to the contraction and relaxation of the extrinsic muscles. The light rays from objects enter the two eyes at different angles that should stimulate the corresponding areas of two retinae. If this is not achieved, that causes double vision. So there is movement of the eyeballs to ensure it. For near objects, both eyeballs move inwards so that their visual axes converge on the object. The nearer the object, the greater the convergence. So for distant object, there must be less convergence. So eyeballs move due to contraction of the extrinsic muscles. And already we have discussed about the different sets of extrinsic muscles. There are 6 extrinsic muscles. So these muscles move the eyeball in different directions. Like superior rectus moves the eyeball upwards, and this is controlled by oculomotor nerve, and the inferior rectus moves the eyeball downwards. Medial rectus moves the eyeballs towards the nose, whereas the lateral rectus moves the eyeball away from the nose, and superior oblique muscle moves the eyeball down and in, and inferior oblique muscles moves the eyeball up and out. So here you can say that the superior rectus muscles and inferior rectus muscles, then medial rectus and inferior oblique muscles are controlled by third cranial nerves, which are known as oculomotor, and lateral rectus muscles are controlled by sixth abducens cranial nerve, and superior oblique muscles are controlled by fourth trochlear cranial nerve. The movement of the eyes to look in a particular direction is under voluntary control, but the coordination of movement of the eyes during convergence and accommodation to near or distant vision is controlled by reflex action. Next we'll see about increased curvature of the lens. So as already you know that the lens is biconvex, elastic and transparent, and it is suspended by the suspensory ligament from the ciliary muscles. So when the light rays enter the eye from the near object, the lens refract these rays onto the macula lutea. Eye accommodation is due to contraction of the ciliary muscles and relaxation of the eye capsule. Due to this, the lens becomes more convex. So here we can see it becomes more convex. The anterior surface bulges more than the posterior, and the refracting power of the lens is increased. When the eyes are accommodated for distant vision, the ciliary muscles are relaxed, the choroid recoils and pulls the suspensory ligament peripherally due to its elastic property. So the anterior surface of the lens becomes flat. So here we can see flat, and the correct image is focused on the retina. Next, we'll see about the image formation on the retina. So, as already we have discussed, the mammalian eye is like a camera and it works as a pinhole camera. The pupil of the eye corresponds to the diaphragm of the camera, lens to the glass lens, and the retina to the film of the camera. So there is a chemical reaction of light in the retina, and already you know that the choroid forms a black coat due to presence of the pigment cells, and this prevents the internal reflection of light rays. The light rays from an object travel through the cornea, aqueous humor, lens, and vitreous humor by refraction and finally fall on the retina to form a mirror image which is upside down and which is smaller than the real object. The rods and cones are stimulated and messages are conveyed to the visual areas of the cerebral cortex through the optic nerve and then interpreted by the brain cells which invert the image and form an impression of an upright. Now next we'll say about the photochemical changes. So when the light falls on the retina, a 1-cis retinal group of rhodopsin is isomerizes to all transretinal through several changes. So within a few picoseconds of the absorption of a photon, rhodopsin is first converted into a photolytic intermediate compound known as batho-rhodopsin, and this is also known as pre-luminorhodopsin. So later this batho-rhodopsin in a nanosecond is converted into lumirhodopsin and then to meta-rhodopsin 1 in microsecond. In a millisecond, meta-rhodopsin 1 is converted into meta-rhodopsin 2. In a minute, a meta-rhodopsin 2 is hydrolyzed to yield opsin and all transretinal which diffuses away from the protein. Dark adaptation. So bleaching of the rhodopsin by bright light cannot stimulate rods. So rhodopsin is quickly reconstituted when the intensity of light is decreased and an adequate supply of vitamin A. So in the darkness, rhodopsin is resynthesized from the opsin and retinine to restore the dark region is known as dark adaptation. So this we have discussed before in the layers of retina. So a layer of rods and cones consists of processes of rods and cones, and in human beings there are about 110 to 125 million rods and 6.3 to 6.8 million cones. Then the rods contain the pigment known as rhodopsin, which is composed of the protein part which is known as opsin, which is also known as scotopsin, and retinine, which is known as retinal, which is an aldehyde of vitamin A. So rods mainly enable the man to see in darkness. So the cones contain photosensitive pigments like porphyrosin and iodopsin and synopsin, which give response to red, green and blue light respectively. The sensations of different colors are produced by various combinations of these three types of cones and their photopigments. When all cones are stimulated equally, they produce a sensation of white light. The protein photopsin is present in cones, and this is different from scotopsin of rhodopsin. So with this, we'll end up this session. Thank you.